українського походження сенатор Стенлі Кутчер в канадському парламенті проголосив місяць вересень як місяць української спадщини в Канаді. У своїй промові сенатор Кутчер згадав видатних осіб українського походження, які своїми досягненнями збагатили Канаду та її суспільство.
Senators, I rise today to speak to Bill S-276, an act respecting Ukrainian Heritage Month. When passed, it will designate September of every year as Ukrainian Heritage Month across Canada, a time to celebrate from coast to coast to coast the contributions Ukrainian Canadians have made to the tapestry of our country. I'm bringing forward this bill to honor my Ukrainian heritage with the support and encouragement of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, Ukrainian diaspora, recently arrived Ukrainians seeking refuge here, and MP Yvonne Baker, who has brought forward similar legislation in the other place. I'm privileged to stand here in this chamber and to share with you the story of my parents and grandparents. They came to this country from Ukraine, having lost all their property, many of their friends, and most members of their own families to Russian and Nazi forces that sought to destroy them, their identity, and their futures. As our previous colleague, Senator Paul Yutsik, stated in his 1964 speech in this chamber, quote, "It is the living human spirit of truth, justice, and liberty which ultimately must prevail for Ukraine and all oppressed peoples who are still struggling for their freedom against Russian communist imperialism. The free countries of the world, including Canada, must mobilize world opinion against the largest existing totalitarian empire," end of quote. Friends, sadly, this challenge still confronts us today. There are now more than 1.3 million people of Ukrainian heritage living in Canada, close to about 4% of our population. My family is counted amongst those, beginning with my grandparents, parents, myself, my two brothers, and then our children and grandchildren. As a boy, I didn't speak English until I started elementary school. The years passed, and due to family circumstances and economic realities, I became more and more removed from my language of origin. My familiarity with my language and culture was nourished by my baba and jido, grandmother and grandfather. Unfortunately, after they died, I stopped speaking Ukrainian. I had nobody in my life that I needed to use my mother tongue with anymore. Since the genocidal Russian war in Ukraine began and Canada started to welcome displaced Ukrainians, I have been privileged to meet many people from my homeland, again seeking refuge on our shores. I have come to know a number of these recent arrivals, and these events have encouraged me to renew my cultural ties, and hence, that's why I'm bringing forward this bill. In fact, colleagues, I've been taking Ukrainian lessons from a young professional who herself and her family is making a difference through their work and community involvement since arriving in Canada. I am improving with every lesson and soon hope to be able to speak Ukrainian at the age of 71, almost as well as I spoke it when I was 6. September is a notable month for Canadians of Ukrainian heritage, as it was in September over 125 years ago that it is believed that the first Ukrainian immigrants arrived in Canada. Ivan Plivkiv and Vasil Ilyanik arrived in Canada on September 7th, 1891. This day is marked in Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario as Ukrainian Heritage Day. Marking the month of September nationally would include these days, while concurrently allowing for celebrations to occur from coast to coast to coast at times that would serve the needs of various communities. There are countless Canadians of Ukrainian heritage who have made contributions to our country in fields of science, the arts, the armed forces, athletics, business, and politics. They have played a part in weaving the tapestry of the Canada of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I will take a moment to highlight only a few here. Individuals such as Roberta Bondar, the first Canadian woman and second Canadian in space. Sylvia Fedorik was another medical pioneer who worked as a medical physicist in the area of the uses of radioactive isotopes in cancer treatment. This trailblazer accomplished many firsts over her lifetime, including becoming the first female lieutenant governor of Saskatchewan in 1988. Raina Tishan was also from Saskatchewan. His father was Canada's first Ukrainian-born senator, and Ray served as a member of the House of Commons from 1974 until 1988 and served in the cabinets of both Joe Clark and Brian Mulroney. On January 29, 1990, he was sworn into office as Canada's Governor-General, where he transformed that office into one that celebrated his phrase, and I quote, "The Governor-General belongs to the people of Canada," end quote. For decades, Canadian households turned in to test their knowledge with Jeopardy host Alex Trebek. Trebek, whose father came to Canada as a boy from Ukraine, worked at the CBC before taking up the helm of Jeopardy. There are countless athletes of Ukrainian descent that have represented Canada, especially NHL hockey players, including Wayne Gretzky. Senators, this chamber has several current members of Ukrainian descent, and there have been many before us. I remember making this connection with Senator Andrzejczyk before her retirement. One such distinguished senator was Paul Yutzik, who was a leader within the Canadian-Ukrainian community, has been called the father of multiculturalism. He set the stage for a shift in the underlying ethnocultural values of the Canada we see today. His first speech in the Red Chamber was centered around the concept of multiculturalism. He insisted that all ethnic groups deserve to be recognized as partners in the Canadian mosaic. In that speech, he pointed out this journey, if successful, would benefit not only Canada, but the world community as well. He said, and I quote, "If we succeed to evolve the pattern of unity and continuing diversity, this will serve as a precedent, a model for other states in the world. It will be Canada's contribution to the world," end quote. The Vyshyvanka is a symbol of that call for understanding, respect, and a willingness to work together for the common good. Traditionally, the Vyshyvanka is a handmade blouse, sewn of natural materials and embroidered with threads of various colors. Ukrainians believe embroidery has a talismanic meaning, the power to protect a person from harm and to bring good luck. The Vyshyvanka is a symbol of the beauty that is created when threads of many colors are woven together. It's a symbol of how every one of us can link with others to create something much greater than the sum of our parts. Senators, we are living in a time that calls for more celebration of the things that bind us together in the face of the things that pull us apart. This is why I'm seeking your support to move this bill celebrating Ukrainian heritage quickly through this chamber and over to the other place. Дякую, thank you, merci, and Eladio.
Дорогі глядачі, вітаємо тепер на нашому екрані сенатора Стенлі Кучера, який з Отави з нами нині поєднався, щоб поговорити про дуже важливий акт, бил в парламенті, який встановлює місяць вересень як місяць української спадщини в Канаді. Senator Kutcher, welcome to our show. And let's start off by saying thank you for introducing the government bill in relation to establishing September as a Ukrainian month. And if we may start off with, after your brilliant speech, there was an interesting commentary, specifically about how the concept of sharing one's heritage helps not just the person celebrating it, but helping the whole country. Could we start with that commentary, Senator? And what made you think that, or how did you extrapolate from ours to sharing everything?
Дуже дякую. Я буду говорити по-англійськи, бо я трохи говорю по-українськи, більше розумію, але тепер моя українська мова, я маю вчителька, і я мушу більше знати. So thank you, and I will continue in English. Thank you for raising that issue. I think that this is a fundamental point about heritage. Very often, when I have talked to people about heritage, they have focused exclusively on wanting others to understand their heritage and wanting themselves to be proud of their heritage and to understand their roots. I completely applaud both parts of that conversation, but it did occur to me that one of the most important things that we could do as we invited others to understand our heritage, as we informed ourselves of our roots, was to use that journey of self-discovery, not only looking inward, but also looking outward. And I think when we reframe understanding heritage as a two-way street instead of as an insular process, I think we're going to get much further to developing the kind of Canada we want to have.
Well, you certainly in your speech made prominent comment about Ukrainians in Canadian history that have served Canada with their own excellence and very proper to share. You've mentioned Madame Bondar, you've mentioned Justice Fedoruk, Governor General Hatishin. You had some fun with hockey. Looks like you're a great Leaf fan. and then obviously Senator Yusik, which was very interesting, and I think a lot of us Canadians don't even understand the merits of Senator Yusik. Maybe you could point out a little bit of that right now, if you would.
Certainly. Senator Yusik, maybe to many Canadians, probably most, and including many Ukrainians, may not realize that he is generally regarded as the father of multiculturalism for Canada. And that in his maiden speech, in his first speech in the Senate, he talked about how important it was to celebrate the contribution of every group, every ethnocultural group that has participated in the building of this incredible country of ours. He also, in that early speech, recognized the importance of indigenous cultures, of indigenous peoples. And of course, many of your listeners will well understand the relationship, the very positive relationship that developed between indigenous peoples and Ukrainian settlers in the late 1800s, early 1900s, during the settlement of the West, and the symbol of the kokum scarf being a reflection of that joint adventure in Canada building. So that also fit in very well with my own thinking about what our heritage is about, which I just explained as a two-way street, because in the multicultural mosaic that Senator Yusik was talking about, the strength of that is not that we keep ourselves separate. The strength of that is that we reach out to understand each other. We all have our own heritage, which we are proud of, which we want to understand, and we want to learn of our roots. But we also intertwine these heritages. Without losing our heritage, we can intertwine it with other people's heritages, and so come together with a tapestry, a richness that Canada can be.
Well, thank you very much for that explanation. And we also would like to publicly thank you for participating in our Bloor West Village Ukrainian Festival in Toronto this past September. And we hope that as a September festival, we fit in properly with your general, so to speak, scheme of things, naming September as the month for Ukrainian heritage.
Well, thank you, and I want to commend the organizers of that festival. They did an incredible job. It has a rich history, and it's a history that is showing growth over time, and I expect it to become even more wonderful over time if that is humanly possible. So it was a pleasure and a privilege to participate, and I hope to make that an annual pilgrimage. And I think September is very apt because it was the first month that the first Ukrainian settlers came to Canada. In fact, Ukrainian Heritage Day is celebrated in a few provinces to remember that. But I think having a month gives communities from coast to coast to coast more freedom to celebrate the Ukrainian heritage, not simply on one day, but across the whole month, depending on what is best in timing for that community.
And Senator, as closing of our interview, but as a beginner of our relationship, as a beginning of our relationship, I would like to ask you something that you could say yes to. We would like to invite you to be the parade marshal of our festival next year to kick off the concept of September being Ukrainian month, first time that it's happening in this new sequence that you're presenting.
Well, that's an incredibly kind invitation, and I would definitely be privileged to take that up. And I have to always say things like, should my parliamentary duties allow? That has to be the case. I'm hopeful that that would be the case. I'm also very hopeful that this bill will be law before then. So we've got work to do because it has to get through the Senate, it has to get through the House, it has to be proclaimed. So the work, the next phase of the work starts tomorrow afternoon. So thank you very much for that invitation, and I hope we're successful soon.
Senator Stanley Kutcher, thank you very much for visiting with us today here. The festival is usually every year, the second weekend after Labor Day. So maybe you can mark that in your calendar and tell the Senate that this is part of your duty as a senator. So thank you very, very much. Excellent speech in Parliament introducing this bill. We will include this in our show and I think send it across to many of our Ukrainian language schools across Canada, because we can certainly learn a lot about our Ukrainian heritage from your speech. Thank you very, very much.
І то дуже дякую і до побачення.
Всього доброго.